which was amazing. For me, it was confirmation that monsters are real. In that mile stretch, there's been 16 accidents. Well, my name is Ed Brown. I've been researching now for about 15, 20 years, been quite a while. Boots on the ground. I've gone out into some of the most remote places. I've traveled all over the country. I've researched in well over a dozen states. I don't have my own area per se. I always go to somebody else's area and see what they've got going on. But got into this actually when I was young. I saw the old Patterson Gimlin film, which was amazing, and it was like, for me, it was confirmation that monsters are real. So I've been interested in it my entire life, but I didn't really get heavily involved until about 15 years ago or so.
So what changed 15 years ago that got you more invested?
I think I was, able to, as opposed to being an armchair researcher, reading all the posts and things of that nature. I was able to go out and start researching, and going to places, and I was invited to places, and then it just turned into the much larger thing. It was great. It was fun. I got to meet a lot of people, and then started my own podcast along with Dan Lindholm, Big Truth. We started our own podcast, which gave me the opportunity to meet more of the more well-known people in the genre. So I got to know, a lot of guys, like Cliff and Bobo are friends of mine. Russ is one of my best friends, Russ Acord. I've been fortunate. I've actually been out bigfooting with Bob Gimlin, which is like bam, like really, Bob Gimlin, it's awesome.
Tell me about that. What was that like, meeting him and going out researching with Bob Gimlin?
Meeting him the first time I met him, and I love this because it tells a lot about the kind of guy he is. When I first met Bob Gimlin, he was at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. So I went up there to meet him, and he made me feel like the only reason he was there was to meet me. Now, that's not saying he was there just to meet me. I'm just saying that's how he made everybody feel. He just has a knack for making you feel good, and he's such a nice, warm, genuine individual, man. If you get to know him, he's like, it's amazing. And a funny story, I'm a pet transporter. I take animals all over the country. That's what I do for a living. And I was driving one day, and my phone rings, and I answer the phone and say hello, and it's Bob. And he says, Ed. I said, yeah. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Like, Bob Gimlin's calling me, like, wow. And he said, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I said, well, yeah, I'm fine. Why, what's up? And he said, well, my wife and I were watching the news, and there was a fella got his van stolen, and it was full of dogs, a little white van, and they found the van, but the dogs are gone. I just want to make sure you're okay. And I said, well, Bob, listen, man, I appreciate you calling me, but it wasn't me. I'm fine. Everything is good. And he goes, well, good to know. And we talked for a minute. It's like, and it was genuine, it wasn't like, like he genuinely called because he cared, and he's just a nice guy. He's literally one of my favorite people in the world. But getting to know Bob is like a dream. It's like, how do you know anyone any better? Really.
So you went out researching with Bob Gimlin. Did you see anything, hear anything when you were in the field doing that?
No,
research?
we by the time we went out researching, he's getting up there in age, and Russell Acord brought him to where we were. He came out and hung out with us for the day. He went out with us. Basically, he just went out with us fairly close to camp, but set up some trail cameras. And it was interesting to kind of pick his brain, because he would say, I think that tree right there facing this way would be good. And we're like, well, why do you say that? What's the reason for it? And he would go into detail about, well, when they come through, they're looking for the path of least resistance and things of that nature, and he's explaining why he's choosing these locations. And it was pretty cool to learn from Bob Gimlin. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. What did you think of that Gimlin film?
Oh, and that's 100% real in my opinion. And there's a plethora of reasons why that film is real, but that film, just looking at it tells me it's real. you hear people talk about the suits and Bob Hieronymus and all these other things that people want to say, but I can tell you in that time frame was about the same time when Planet of the Apes came out, if you remember that movie.
Mhm.
So in order for me to think that was a suit, you would have to convince me that two cowboys from Washington was able to make a better suit out of material that didn't exist yet, that was better than Hollywood producers making Planet of the Apes. Because that's, if that was a suit, it was better than Planet of the Apes. So you'd have to do an awful lot of convincing to get me to think that was a suit. That was not a suit. That's a real animal.
Well, I'm sure you've analyzed that
Of
film
course,
pretty well. What were
sure.
the other things that made it real to you?
Well, one of the things that really sticks out to me, and I've never heard anybody really talk about it, but it is Patty's right armpit. That crease right here in her arm, that can only be made with the skin. It's if it was a suit, you wouldn't see that. It's hard to explain. Um, if it were a suit, again, the only way you could recreate that armpit is by using material that didn't exist yet. It would have to be a stretchy, skin tight material that would, stay against the skin right in that location, right underneath her right armpit. And you just can't fake that. So that's number one. It's the muscle contours. It's there's like the way she walks, her gait in general, her legs. When a human walks, their leg from their knee to their shin go at a specific angle. Hers was always more. Every step she would bring her feet up higher, which we don't do. Now that's in my opinion, and it's just my opinion. I'm no expert on locomotion or gait or anything of that nature, but I can tell you that in my opinion, that's due to the environment. Where we humans normally walk is places where it's designed for us to walk. There aren't any obstacles. There's no reason to raise our feet up so high because it's just a waste of energy. For her or any animal in the woods, they've got to watch out for rocks, stumps, logs, all these obstacles. So it's natural that their feet would naturally come up higher when they take a step. And I think that that's the case with her. I think that that's just another tell, in my opinion, that video is 100% authentic.
He talk about the film at all with you?
Yeah, oh yeah. We talked in detail about the film, and it wasn't just the film. He did tell me, as far as the film goes, he told me that when, in that famous clip where Patty's looking over her shoulder, he said that she's actually looking at him. He had, when she walked out, Roger's horse reared up and Roger kind of fell off the horse, but he grabbed the camera out of the saddlebag and he started running and started filming. Bob was on his horse, and Bob's horse, he took it to the left and went over the creek and was on the other side of the creek on the left side. And he had pulled out his rifle, and he said that because he didn't know what she was going to do, because to them it was just a wild animal. They didn't know what to think. But he said it looked so human, but it wasn't. It was and he was. I mean, if you ever get a chance to talk to Bob, I mean, you got to take it. It's like, to listen to him and to talk to him it's like another level. But so he said when she turned around, she turned to look at him to see what he was going to do. And since he wasn't posing a threat, she didn't, run. She just picked up a little pace on her walk and just walked away. So it was it was fun to listen to him tell the story. But he went into a lot of detail about things that led up to that point, and then a whole lot of stuff afterwards that people don't even know. Um, they put cardboard over the prints so that they could cast them the next day because it was going to rain. And that night it did rain, but it became like a big storm. And he said he got out in the rain and went and covered them up, or I'm sorry, he took cardboard out to cover them up because they weren't covered is what it was. I'm sorry. But, just the stories and talking to the man it's like crazy. It's like, man, just like Bob Gimlin,
I've heard there's a lot more footage than what we see in just that little short film. Did he address that at all?
Not footage of Patty. There's footage of them kind of riding through the woods, things of that nature. He didn't address it one way or the other, but I've seen the other footage, and it's not anything Bigfoot related. It's just basically Roger and Bob going through the woods, and usually just one of them in the video. So, but it's a lot of guess you could call it B-roll, I guess, nothing Bigfoot related per se.
Sure. So these other people that you know and have gone out researching with, what have been some of the incidences that have happened when you've been in the field researching?
Oh yeah, we've gosh, let's see. Let me think of a good one. I was out with Adam. We were in Alabama. Adam Davis, by the way. It's spelled Davies, but it's pronounced Davis, which is kind of funny. But he and I were in Alabama along with a few other people, and this was a pretty interesting occurrence here. But so there's five, and we're walking down this, or I'm sorry, yeah, there's five of us. I'm sorry, five of us, and we're walking down this road, and on thick woods on both sides of the road, and at one point we heard some noise in the woods to our left, and well, what one of the ladies with us said, like I just saw like light from the moon shine off of something shiny like fur, and without a second she just right on in the woods. And Jason says, hey, I'll go with her. So Jason goes in with her. So they're in there for a minute, and then the other girl that was with us, Ashley, she said she saw movement, and I'm like, well, let's go. So I went in with her. So we're in the woods. So I don't know what's going on outside of where we are, but we're in there for about probably 10 or 15 minutes. We didn't see anything. We don't really hear anything else. We come out and nobody's there. Okay. So she's like, well, where'd everybody go? And I said, well, let's find out. So I yelled roll call really loud, and basically waiting, hoping to get a response so we knew where everybody else was. And so I said, roll call. And we got a response, a voice said, the only discrepancy in my story and hers was like, she thought it said, here, and I thought it said, yeah, that was the only thing that differed between our stories. And I said, okay, well, there's Jason and Denise. They're right there. Cause I thought it was them responding, and then I was like, well, where'd Adam go? And we see a flashlight way, way down the road, like quarter mile down the road. So I'm like, well, Adam's down there. He's by himself. So let's go down where Adam is. And they're fine. So we go walking down the road, and the light starts coming towards us. So we end up meeting in the middle, and it's Denise. And I'm like, well, what are you doing here? I thought you were with Jason. She goes, I am. I said, well, where's Adam? She goes, he's back there. I'm like, so Adam's back there? She goes, yeah, we all are. I'm like, wait a minute. Everybody's back there? She goes, yeah. I'm like, well, then who? And Denise or Ashley and I looked at each other like, wait a minute, what the hell? What just happened? We just got a response. So I'm telling them about this. So I went in and listened to the recording, and sure enough, on the recording, you hear me say roll call, and then it's very faint, but you can hear it in the recording, but you hear the response. And then right after that, there's a definitive without question. And we didn't hear this, and I should probably describe the recorder we use, and I will, but right after the response, we got a whoop, a very clear whoop sound, that was kind of interesting. And the recorder we were using was this thing was, Jason built it, and it's like an amazing recorder. It's crazy. It'll pick up stuff from a mile away, like really crazy. But it's in a box. It's got like a big car battery in it or a motorcycle battery or something like that in it. It's on this really high stand pole, and the recorder sits on top. So it's recording in a 360 degrees all the way around. So I'm surmising that because we didn't hear the whoop must have come from the other side of the recorder, which was probably 400 yards from where we were, maybe 300 yards from where we were. So that was a pretty interesting, find and capture and video and audio recording.
Yes, sounds like it. Well, anything else that's happened while you've been out in the field researching?
Yeah, I've had what I can only describe as bluff charges. I've had it happen to me twice actually, and it's I was in Washington at the where the Grace Harbor video was taken. Are you familiar with that?
Sure.
The Grace Harbor. I was there at that location, and I was with Sarah and Jonathan Brown. No relation. Great people, by the way. Love them to death. They were so kind. They were great hosts. Just wonderful people. But we were on the property, and we were probably 30, 40 feet from where they were standing when they took that video. And Jonathan was on my right and Sarah was on my left. And from the woods on the left side, something, I can't explain this, but something was coming at us through the woods. And in my mind, I 100% thought that when I got my light over there, I was going to see a moose running towards us. That's what it sounded like. It was that loud. It was very aggressive, very loud. And it was, whatever it was not quiet. It was extremely loud. Sarah grabs my arm and like her fingernails went into my arm. Jonathan turns with a gun. I turn with a flashlight. Sarah gets her flashlight out and there's nothing there. So I have no idea what it was, where it went or what happened, but something was making a lot of racket in the woods and then suddenly stopped, and it just didn't come into view. And then I had the same thing happen to me while I was alone in Oregon. We had gotten a hit on FLIR, and I told one guy, I said there was three of us there, and I told one guy, I said, here, you hold the camera on that hit, whatever that is, just keep the camera on that. All right. I'm going to start walking that way by myself. It should run away. And if it does, we can capture it running away. We can get a better video of it on the FLIR because we're recording on the FLIR. He's like, all right. So I start walking that way and I'm probably 50 yards in by this point. It's not real thick where we were, but it was real thick right after that. And there was an opening, I don't know, probably 30 foot in diameter opening in the woods, just a bare spot in the middle, just a big round circle. And it was like 2:00 in the morning, give or take. It was middle of the night. And when I stepped into that circle, I heard a whistle, like a bird, I'm going, okay, what was that? So I stopped. I'm like, that was weird. Now I have nothing with me, by the way. I don't have a flashlight. The only thing I have is my, is a walkie-talkie. That's it. It's the only thing I have is a walkie-talkie because I'm telling them which direction am I going? Where am I going? Tell me where to go, And, so I'm like, So I take another step in and it whistles again. So I stop. I'm like, man, that is so weird. So I did it again, whistle again. I stopped and I told them on the radio, I said, this is really weird. And I told them what was going on. And I said, I'm not stopping this time. If I hear the whistle, I'm going to keep going. And they're like, okay, just be careful. And I said, all right. So I took the step. Sure enough, there was a whistle and I kept going and then the whistling stopped. I'm standing right in the middle of that circle and I'm looking around going, and I'm wondering which direction do I need to go to wherever that hit is on the FLIR, that little heat image, heat signature. And from my left, just this, the only way to describe it is a moose running through the woods. That's the only way to describe it. It's loud, it's aggressive, it's knocking down branches, it's breaking stuff. It's like loud and it's coming right at me. And I'm there with no weapon, no nothing, no flashlight, no nothing. And all I could do was turn and kind of get set, like, okay, here we go. This is how I die, And then again, just before it comes into view, it just stops, you know. And the craziest thing about it is the next day when it was daylight, we went walking through there because I'm telling them guys, I'm like, there's going to be broken branches, there's going to be footprints, there's going to be plenty of evidence that something was here because nothing can make that much noise and leave nothing. But nothing, not one broken branch, not one footprint, nothing. I'm going, that just doesn't make any sense. You know, I still have no idea. I can't explain it.
What do you think? And I'm sure you've tried to figure this out, but what do you think was going on there that you could hear this ruckus and then nothing as far as physical evidence there that it existed?
Well, I thought about that, and I've got a couple scenarios anyway that I think could be. One is I think that something could have been there watching and just took a tree or a branch and just started shaking it, you know, which would obviously make me think something's coming towards me, you know, or it was not breaking branches as I thought. It was just moving stuff out of the way as it ran through, you know. But you would still think that there would be something, you know, and there truly was nothing. We found absolutely nothing to give any indication of what it could be. And we did the same thing at Jonathan and Sarah Brown's place. You know, there was and where the Great Harbor video was taken, and there was nothing there either. You know, we never found any evidence of anything, which is, and we all three heard that one. I mean, we all three heard it. It was, I mean, it sounds like a freight train coming through the woods, and there's nothing there. It's just the craziest thing, you know? So I don't know what it was. My best guess is that something was there and just started shaking trees, trying to scare me away. That's what I think it was, but I have no way of knowing one way or the other. But good question.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, you know, we're all trying to find evidence, and you think
Right.
you had some evidence or should have some evidence, and then all
Right.
you have is a sound.
Right. Exactly.
That
Yeah,
may
it's a
be
little disheartening.
frustrating, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's
So what do you think these things are?
I personally, I just believe that they are flesh and blood. I think it is an animal. You know, and how do I say this? Because you know, I want to be honest. While I've had some odd and strange occurrences in the woods, I've seen things that I can't really explain. I don't think that just because you're looking for Bigfoot and you see an orb or you see a light or you see something out of the norm, that doesn't mean it's Bigfoot doing it just because you're looking for Bigfoot. If you were looking for dogs, would you think that was dogs? You know, so I try to be careful about what I classify things as, but as far as Bigfoot goes, I believe it's a missing link, if you will, in the evolutionary tree that just has decided to stay hidden. You know, I don't think they want interaction. I don't think they want us messing with them. I think they're curious. They will come and check us out, there's a lot of evidence of that. Most sightings, that is exactly what's happening. You know, they're peeking around a tree or something along those lines, you know, and I think they're curious, but I don't think they want to interact, you know. So in my personal opinion, I think they're just another animal, just like you and I, or a bear or a deer or anything else, flesh and blood.
Right. So even though you don't connect your orbs and light incidences with anything to do with Bigfoot, could you describe what you've seen in the woods?
Oh yeah, I've seen. It's hard to describe some of the things I've seen in the woods. In fact, the same night we were at in Washington, I was at John and Sarah's place, and we were standing there, and it was almost like, okay, and I'm going to try to describe this the best I can because it was interesting, but it was almost like someone flipped on a light switch and then turned it right back off. But the light itself was about this big around, a little bit bigger than a basketball, say maybe like a medicine ball. It was like, because I was looking right at it when it came on, which is just coincidental, but I saw it very clearly, but it was just like a light, like a big globe. and it came on, and all the light was condensed. It wasn't like it illuminated the entire woods. It just lit up in a very soft light, and it was like, and then it just went away, it just turned off, like as if somebody flipped a switch and then turned it off. And I am a kind of a curious nature, so the next day, without them even knowing it, and if they listen to this, Jonathan, Sarah, it's not that I don't trust you, but I got to check. I went out there and I looked for wires, I looked for lights, I looked for everything, and there was nothing there. None of that was there. So I don't know what it was. Absolutely no clue what it was, but it was weird. I've seen we've seen some a lot of light anomalies, which is really odd. And I believe wholeheartedly in the paranormal as well. And I do a lot of paranormal investigations. I do things of that nature as well. And I love that, That being said, I try to separate the two. I don't, if you're having Bigfoot experiences, okay, if you have a Bigfoot sighting, and at the same time, the same investigation, you see lights flicker, which I've had happen. It's so rare that happens that I believe personally that there is some kind of paranormal anomaly going on with these lights. What that is, I don't know. And using, not saying ghosts, I'm saying paranormal, but why would Bigfoot not be interested in that as well? Why would he, if he finds us curious and wants to come and check us out, why would he not find that interesting and want to go check that out as well? So the odds of having both of those things happening in the same investigation, while rare, I don't think it's astronomical. It's possible, and in my opinion, I think they're just as curious as we are by these strange anomalies that are going on. So, yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, for sure. So the lights are basically the only thing you've seen out there in the woods that's been unusual.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. We were in Oregon one time, and in fact, Russell Acord was with us. Adam was with us, and then Dan Lindholm from Big Truth was with us, as well as Kirk Brown. And there was 5 of us, and 4 of us, Adam and I, had night vision goggles on. Dan and Kirk were using their naked, just a naked eye, and we saw. I don't know how to explain it, but in the night vision goggles and with the human eye, we all 4 saw it. There was an orange, like a sparkling thing. It was, I don't really know how to explain it other than that. It was just like there was this sparkling going on, and we're all like, what in the world is that? What is that? But we all saw it, and we all described it as orange. So we went over, we were talking to Russ, and we were telling Russ about what we had just seen. And Russ said, wait a minute, you guys saw the orange through the night vision? And we said, yeah, we all 4 saw orange. And he goes, you can't. I'm like, what? But we did. He goes, it's impossible. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, the night vision goggles doesn't recognize orange. You can only see white, black, and green. And I'm like, oh crap, he's right. But we saw orange through the night vision goggles. So I can't explain it other than that, but that's what we saw. We saw orange in the night vision goggles.
Well, it sounds like a fairly large number of things that's kind of unexplained. One of the things that stood out to me was, when you heard the ruckus in the woods and then you went to look and there was no evidence that anything had been there. And then also you saw that unusual light and you went to see if there was any kind of connection, and there was no evidence that anything was there. And obviously this, there's orange, but you can't see orange, but you did see orange, and no explanation for that. Do you think there's any possibility, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is the first time I've thought of this, that this is some kind of a projection, but that your senses are able to pick up on, but it's not like a physical thing? Like the
You mean
sound, the
Bigfoot in
light,
general?
the orange. No, no, not Bigfoot himself.
Oh,
No,
I got you. I
the
got you.
sound, the light phenomena, and the seeing
Sure,
the orange. Could you be perceiving this as something that's being projected, and that isn't even a physical thing? It's just present.
sure.
Can't trust your
The
five senses, in other words.
Sure. I will tell you that there are most of the light anomalies. I would 100% agree with that. It's possible that you know people see sometimes they claim they see lights in the woods and things like that, and I believe they do because I've seen them myself. But they it very well could be like you get your eyes are playing tricks on you. Maybe your eyes are doing something. You're not really seeing a light in the woods. Your eyes are just doing something. Very possible. Um, excuse me. The bluff charges, as I call them, there is absolutely no mistaking what I heard. That was definitely not a projected sound. That was real. 100%. If my mind could project that loud of a noise in that setting, then I should probably not be doing this anymore. Because that was that noise is, I mean, imagine, and this is not an exaggeration. I want you to imagine this, you and your listeners, but imagine listening to um, a moose running through the woods. Okay, the antlers hitting branches and the just the sounds it would make. That is very reminiscent to what I heard both times, because both times it was exactly the same. It was something, at least in my mind, running right towards me through the woods and just out of view. Like there's all these, we talk about it a lot when we research because it's very important. There are certain layers in what you see in the woods. What the first layer is, you can see past trees. You can see around trees. These close ones. That next layer, it gets really thick and you got to really look, and then the next layer you can't see anything. So you have, which layer was it? But when something is just out of view making that kind of noise, it is definitely, I don't know what's doing it. I don't know, I can't say a Bigfoot is doing it per se, but I can say that it isn't quiet. It's very loud, and it's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Well, yeah, it's especially scary if you can't really figure out what it was. I do remember doing an interview though with a woman who was walking across a field. It was dark, it was night, and she had other researchers back in a wood line, and she was walking across a field to another wood line, and she heard something running up behind her. It was a very, very strong sound. And she'd been a runner, so she knew what that sounded like, to have someone running behind you. Now, the other researchers back there in the field, however, they saw nothing. There was nothing visible behind her whatsoever across the
Right.
field. She assumed it was one of the other researchers running up behind her, and it wasn't. So, she could hear it, but there was nothing there that was visible. So,
Sure.
which is another odd thing. And there again, I want to go back to, all of these things are very unusual, but we only have our five senses to really have discernment in regarding reality around us. So that's even scarier if we can't trust that, right?
Sure. We were in California. We were up in near Big Bear. We were at the site where Claudia Ackley saw, got the video of that thing in the tree, in the fork of the tree. And we were up there doing an investigation, and we were starting to leave, and we were walking. We have flashlights out, and we're, kind of looking around for footprints on our way out, and I heard anyway, people talking, like people were coming towards us, and I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I heard human conversation. It sounded like you and I talking. I just couldn't make out what they were saying. And I kind of went up a little bit in front just to let, them know that, hey, there are people here, and I heard them moving around in the woods. I heard them talking. And I even told everybody else with us, I said, hey guys, there's some people up here. Don't get, don't freak out. Don't, get panicked or whatever, because you start hearing noises and everybody's like, oh, Bigfoot over there. I wanted them to know, hey, there are people up here coming towards us. but never saw anybody. The voices stopped, the sound stopped. Don't know what happened. Don't know what it was, but I heard, they didn't hear it, but I heard people talking and people moving around right there in the woods. I heard it. And I'm like even telling these guys, hey guys, there's people up here. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I'm just letting them know I'm being loud so they can hear us. So they know we're here. And nobody was there. I can't explain that either, but I heard
Right.
voices. I heard people talking. So I understand what she means by feeling like one of her teammates were, coming up behind her, because that's your senses when you're in any situation, and your mind is always trying to make sense of everything. Okay. Which is why you have pareidolia. When you look at a picture and, you see this, but it's because your mind is trying to make sense out of it, and then the, on the other hand, you do that. Your mind does the same thing with sounds. You hear things and your mind's saying, "Oh, that's just voices," or um, things are. Your mind wants things to fit into a natural circle. Okay, and sometimes they don't, but your mind tries to convince you they do. So it's interesting. It's an interesting psychological aspect to what we do, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, indeed. And because in the Bigfoot field, mostly what we have to go on are just personal accounts, personal witness accounts. And so
Right.
we're sort of almost 100% dependent upon people's five senses and how accurately they're able to achieve recall of that information. Now we do have, of course, the foot cast and and that sort of thing, but otherwise there isn't a huge amount of information. So what do you think is the best inquiry method when someone is a witness to a Bigfoot incident? What do you think helps to help them to clarify what they have actually experienced?
I think giving them an opportunity to use their own words. If you try to, if you know, and I've interviewed people where, and I've seen people interviewed where the interviewer tries to put words in their mouth. So what you're saying is you saw something blue, or whatever, and and then they try to rationalize by saying, well, he knows what he's talking about, so yes, that's what I'm saying, and that may not be what they're trying to say. Let people talk. Let people, a good interviewer is a good listener. You know what I mean? You have to be a good listener to be a good interviewer. Because if you don't let people talk, then you're not going to get the proper information. So I think the most important thing to do anytime you're talking to a witness is to let them talk. Don't put words in their mouth. Don't try to guess what they're trying to say. Don't try to talk over them. Let them talk. Then take that information and make your conclusion from that. But let them talk. Let them tell it in their verbiage. Some people, the vocabulary may not be as good as other people's. So they may not know the right words, the words that you're expecting to hear. Just let them use their own talk. Let them talk. Let them listen. I think that's the most important thing.
So in your podcast, primarily what do you focus on?
I think in my podcast, the thing that I focus on the most was to let the audience get to know the guest. That's, it's like, excuse me, perfect examples. I had Bob Gimlin on twice on the show. And the first time we talked a little bit about the Patty incident, but most of that interview was what happened outside of that. I told him, I said, everybody knows the story. You can listen to any podcast and they're hearing you tell the story like a broken record over and over and over. I want to know I want to know what else happened. Tell me what happened after that. Tell me what happened before that, and that's what we talked about the entire interview was that. And then the second time I interviewed Bob, it was, let's get to know Bob. We talked about his military. He was a boxer. He knew Evel Knievel. This guy's an absolutely amazing. He's lived a wonderful and amazing life, and it was good to let him talk about that because it was a fun conversation. So my podcasts were more designed to get to know the person as opposed to listen to their stories, because let's be honest, the people that were on my shows, everybody pretty much knows their stories. Let's get to know them. So that's what I focused on mostly.
Where do you think in the country is the best place for someone to run into a Bigfoot?
Well, I've been asked that a lot, and it seems like I change my mind all the time. You know, I think the most activity I've ever gotten is in Southern Oregon. Is got to be probably the number one spot. And all the things that I've encountered, all the either whether it be crazy stuff or and I use the term crazy lightly. I'm not saying anybody who believes that is crazy. I think there's a place for everybody's theories. Everything should be researched. If you have a theory, research it. You should have every right in the world to go look at whatever you want. So I'm not calling anybody crazy. I'm just saying it's different. It's a different theory. But if there's been a lot to happen in Southern Oregon. So I guess I'd have to say Southern Oregon would probably be, if you wanted to have a Bigfoot encounter or a Bigfoot experience, that's probably where I would advise you to go.
Sure, you've heard the Sierra sounds. What do you think of those?
Wow. I've talked to Ron about that. And it's an interesting exchange. And I've actually heard something very similar in Southern Oregon, very similar. And it's, I have no doubt that whatever that was, and knowing Ron, that is authentic. There's, it's hard to put a logical explanation on something that seems or sounds illogical. All right. So I guess I haven't wrapped my head around it enough yet, or have an understanding of it, or have experienced it enough to base an opinion per se. But I will say that knowing Ron, and there's no, it's real. It's whatever it is, it's real. Whatever's making those sounds is real. There's something out there making those sounds. Could it be, if I guess my best guess would be, it's probably a little group of juveniles that were being mischievous and probably wander too far from home. You know what I mean? But because it is definitely an interesting sound, that's for sure.
My first interview on Bigfoot anything was with Scott Nelson, and he's the linguist, of course, who analyzed those Sierra sounds. He came up with a lot of theory about how it's a language of sorts. Thus, I named it Bigfoot the language. Have you heard his theory on that?
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard his theory. I've never had an opportunity to talk to Scott. I've heard good things about him. I don't know the guy. I've never talked to him. But everything I've heard about him is good. I've never heard anything negative. He's obviously good at what he does. And I think if he feels that that's a language, I'm open to that being the case. Absolutely.
It's interesting.
And it very well could be. It very well could be a language. He may be 100% right.
I spent 6 hours with him getting 2 interviews, part 1, part 2 of Bigfoot the language. And it was a learning experience. I highly recommend checking him out, because he does have a lot of information on that. And I also met Ron and did quite a lengthy interview with him as well. So every piece of the puzzle adds to maybe more clarity about what we're dealing with as far as a Bigfoot goes.
Absolutely. Right.
And of course, my audience tends to really like those personal experiences. Just the authentic voice of someone who had, this was the experience I had. Someone fishing, hunting, walking in the woods, whatever, and this very unusual experience kind of unfolds in front of them, whether it be a verbal thing or whether it be a visual sighting of something like that. What do you think of Dogman?
I'm on the fence with it. Obviously people are seeing something, and I've heard from people that I consider very credible, talking about the Dogman. I've never had an experience with anything of the like. I've been out quite a bit. I don't. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I've never had an experience with it, and I guess it goes back to that. It's hard to put a logical thought process together of something that seems so illogical that you've never experienced. So I I believe the witnesses that I've talked to, the people that that I find credible. I believe that they've had an experience. I believe that they're dealing with something. I don't know if there's a I guess if I were to just blurt out an answer right now, I'd probably say there's probably more of a misidentification. Um, the only animal I can think of with a snout like that, other than a wolf or something, a canine type animal in the woods, would be a bear. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're seeing a bear with the mange or something along those lines. And I don't know. I've never seen it, so it's hard to give an opinion other than to say I haven't experienced it myself. While I've definitely heard a lot about them, I don't have any personal experience to draw on when it comes to a dogman.
Right. It seems as if it's a slightly different type of experience, much more aggressive type of creature. When they do have a sighting with them, they seem more aggressive than
Sure.
Bigfoot, but there are certainly fewer dogman encounters that I'm hearing about, at least, as opposed
Right.
to the Bigfoot encounters, which seem less aggressive most of the time. They seem more try to, like the bluff charge that you experienced, they're more like that, where it's intimidating someone, but they're not actually attacking a person,
Right.
attempting to do something more aggressive. Very unusual. What do you think about like the Skinwalker Ranch and all of the really bizarre stuff that's going on at places like that?
Well, I am just as intrigued. I've been to the Skinwalker. I've never been on Skinwalker Ranch. I've never been privy to that, but I've been, to the gate. I've been up on the mesa, looking down at it. It's the stories. I mean, the stories go back there. And that's one of the things I really like is when there's a documented history of an area or a location or a particular set of sightings or whatever. I always give that a lot more weight. Um, I it's hard to explain what that is, and I don't know. I don't personally think that whatever's going on there is cryptid. I don't think it's a Bigfoot or a Dogman or any of those things. I think it's either a lot of paranormal or maybe even some ufology. Maybe there's a UFO dealing with that stuff. And I watch the shows and I'm just as intrigued. um, uh, those guys are awesome. They do a great job, and they definitely keep me on the edge of my seat. But there's definitely something going on that, and I think that's kind of the misconception. I think everybody thinks it's Skinwalker Ranch. It's not just the ranch; it's the area, And there's crazy things, wild things going on outside the ranch as well, So I don't know what it is, but I do believe. I think they're onto something by going underground. I guess I'll leave it at that. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something underground there that they're starting to get into. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, and it's not just that one area. I've done several interviews. I did an interview called Colorado Ranch. I have a location there that has very similar types of experiences in Marley
Oh,
Woods,
wait.
Missouri.
Is that Tom
Um,
Miller?
no, Colorado Ranch was with Katie Page.
Who's the ranch owner?
I don't know who the ranch owner is at
Oh, I
this
got you.
time.
Okay,
She grew up there. She grew up on that
I got you.
ranch, and very
Okay,
unusual happenings all of her life there. And they just recently did a documentary from the ranch also, so she went back, but she grew up there. But Katie Page was the person that I actually interviewed on the Colorado Ranch
sure.
episode that I did, and then Marley Woods here in Missouri, and then I did an interview uh, about a place. I think it's in Georgia. Actually, they don't say exactly where it is, but it has also very similar more experiences like the Skinwalker Ranch. So I don't know if it's just like one place, but if there are perhaps scattered places about that have these very unusual things happening.
Right. Well, the reason I ask you the name of the ranch, I was recently in Colorado myself, and we actually did a documentary. It's actually in the editing phases now, and it was on a ranch in Colorado, outside of oh my gosh, what's the name of that town? I cannot remember. South of Denver. It's going to drive me crazy now until I remember.
Maybe
It'll probably hit me.
Littleton or somewhere around there, around Littleton or
It
south of
was,
Denver.
well, Littleton is a suburb of Denver. This
Yeah,
was down
Laughlin.
way below
No, it's
that.
not Laughlin. Between
Yeah, this
Colorado
was
Springs and Denver, anyway, right? That's where Katie Page grew up, on a ranch between
right.
Denver and Colorado Springs.
Gotcha. This would have been lower than this is actually lower than Colorado Springs. But it was we nicknamed it Mutilation Ranch. And in fact, without I don't want to give out too much information on the documentary yet, but I will say that there have been in a 1 mile stretch of highway that literally runs right. The ranch owner owns both sides of the highway. All right. And this road goes right through his ranch for a mile and a half. All right. In that mile stretch, there's been 16 accidents. All right. Eyewitnesses have claimed cars literally going off the ground, floating, and then crashing. All right. With fatalities, people have died, like horrible accidents. Okay. There have also been 16 cattle mutilations. Right. 16 times his cattle has been mutilated. One, and I'm trying to remember if this was on his ranch, so don't quote me on where this was, but I think it was on his ranch. He came outside and he found a dead, mutilated cow on top of a living. So he had to put the other one to sleep. So that's interesting. And they actually found and this is documented. It's a sheriff back in and I'm trying to remember the years and stuff. There's a lot of information on this, but this would have been like in the 70s, I guess. Went out to the ranch and they found a mutilated cow in a tree or on a fence. I'm sorry, it was on a fence. It was on a fence. So it's almost like they're like aliens are taking these cattle, doing the mutilation, and then just coming over and dropping them back on the ground. And in two different instances, one on top of another cow, one on top of a fence. It's odd that there were 16 accidents and 16 cattle mutilations. That's odd in the first place. I don't know if I should say his name. I'll just say there's a scientist who's very famous. I mean, he's very well known. Was at the ranch, and he ran some tests and found, using his scientific equipment, one spot that had zero gravity, which is, I mean, mind-boggling. Think about that. So this spot, and it moved, by the way. It wasn't always there. Like one day it's there, another day it's another place. And but it's all on that ranch basically. And he said there's only one other place on Earth that he's been that he has seen that exact same phenomenon, and that was Skinwalker Ranch. So that's pretty interesting. There's Colorado ranches. They have there's definitely something to those, and that's pretty interesting. But we had quite a bit of stuff. And it was weird. Not so much on the ranch though. It's kind of funny, but anyway, yeah, it was interesting. It was a fun trip.
Well, since you brought up animal mutilations, one of the few things that I personally have seen is an orange light about maybe a quarter mile over in a field that I looked at for quite some time, and then the next morning realized that, or was told that there were cattle mutilations in the area, 3 of them, one in that field, one to the farm to the left, and one to the farm to the right that very same night. Just curious, the orange light that all 4 of you saw, was that anywhere near animal mutilation incidents that were happening?
No, that orange light was again, it was first, it was more like as if someone, like those sparklers you light on 4th of July, with the sparkles going. That's kind of what it was. And it was deep in the woods in Southern Oregon. I mean, we were not far from Grants Pass, Oregon, is where that happened. So no ranches in that area that I'm aware of, and nothing happened that I'm aware of.
Right, right. Just curious because I was told that that orange light that I saw sometimes is visible around areas where cattle are mutilated sometimes. So I didn't know
Right.
if there was a correlation there or not. Well, what else can you tell me about your experiences or anything? You know, how can people see your podcast? What do we need to know?
Sure. Yeah, you can. If anyone's interested, they can go to Big Truth. That's BIGTRUTH, one word. Big Truth. Um, YouTube. All of our a lot of our research is on there. Dan Lindholm runs the page, and he does a great job with that. He does a lot of his own research. Um, you can check out our research. You can check out the different podcasts. Yeah, so definitely go to Big Truth on YouTube. Check that out. That's going to be a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much the only place that I really, I'm too busy doing stuff to do anything like that. So, um, but yeah,
It's fun.
that's definitely, yeah, it is. I mean,
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's the mystery. Don't you think it's the mystery that keeps us all going back and doing more research?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's if Bigfoot had already been discovered and verified by science, which it and it has in a sense, you know, it's the verification that we need now. We have proof, DNA, we have proof that there's something there that we don't know what it is. Now it's just a matter of finding out what it is. There is DNA, there's evidence. I wish that science would. I get. I guess it's frustrating to be looking for something, and then you hear about somebody turning in DNA and it comes back with unknown species, unknown species, unknown species. Instead of saying unknown species, why don't they take that and say, okay, this is animal X. We don't know what it is yet. We'll just call it animal X. Then start seeing if this DNA matches that. Does that DNA match that? Does that DNA match that? Let's first discover animal X and then find out what animal X is. We know there's something out there. We get plenty of, either unknown DNA, unknown hair, unknown, there are sounds, audio, video. There's enough evidence to show something is there. I think we need to stop saying, well, we just don't know what it is, and just say, okay, this is animal X. Now let's see what else is animal X. You know what I mean? And I think that's where science needs to get more involved. I mean, I'm 100% agree and on board with the scientific method. I just wish science would take it a little more serious. That's all.
Right, exactly. Well, I think we're getting there. I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
progress.
sure. Yeah, there's great scientific minds. Jeff Meldrum, Maria Mayer. There's a lot of scientists out there who are giving a legitimate look into what these things are, and that's good. That's exactly what we need.